It's my pleasure to welcome you here to this jointly sponsored keynote address from the Mormon Social Science Association and the Religious Studies program here at UVU. My name is Brian Birch, and I have the pleasure of serving as the director of the Religious Studies program here, and welcome all of you to campus. Some of you are familiar to me, others are not, but we hope you enjoy all of the events both today and for the next couple of days. As you can imagine, with events like these, there are several people to thank, and obviously we want to thank our partners from the Mormon Social Science Association, and it's always a pleasure to have them on our campus. I also want to recognize the hard work of David Knowlton and my colleague Boyd Peterson, both in the Religious Studies program with me, along with the very hardworking staff of the Center for the Study of Ethics, Courtney Burns, Gabriel Toscano, and our student volunteers who will be helping over the next couple of days. So just to give you a sense for what's coming, the annual Mormon Studies Conference is held each spring here at UVU, and our theme over the next 2 days is Multicultural Mormonism. And we're hosting events all day tomorrow. We're hosting a reception at 6:30 p.m. tomorrow. If you are interested in attending a reception with food and music and good company, please see me, and I'll make arrangements to have you there and get you on the list. But it's my pleasure now to introduce my colleague and friend David Knowlton to introduce our keynote speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. I'm very excited tonight to be here to be able to introduce to you Armando Solorzano. Utah's Latino community is amazingly complex. It's a community that's very diverse with people of many different origins, and even we could say ethnic differences, national differences, class differences, religious differences. Sometimes people don't speak to one another. But on the other hand, there's also a commonality of facing a society that's majority Anglo that leads to a kind of common categorization. And so I'm very happy to be able to present to you Professor Armando Solorzano from the University of Utah to help us walk through some of the complexities and diversity of this fascinating community of Latinos in Utah. I was at the UNAM, the National University of Mexico, in the Autonomous University of Mexico City last week for a dissertation defense. And interestingly enough, part of it was about people from central Mexican villages who are Nahuatl or post-Nahuatl, who were some of the people who were very early immigrants into Salt Lake Valley. And what struck me as fascinating is how quickly there was a connection, a bridge established between central Mexico and Salt Lake that has led to many people, not only the founding of a community, a Mormon community in Salt Lake around the three Hernandez sisters, but also a back and forth. But that's only one community. There's a community of people who came to work in the mines. There's a community who worked around the various Catholic parishes in Salt Lake. And as a result, it makes for a very, very, very interesting and complex community. And I think no one is better situated than Professor Solorzano to help us understand our way through it. Professor Solorzano has recently published a book a couple of years ago now that is beautifully done in a bilingual edition. To be able to accomplish a bilingual book with one chapter in English and one chapter in Spanish is an amazing task. It's even more amazing to get a press to agree to publish it. I don't know how you did that. You've got secrets, man. But somehow we pulled it off. The title is We Remember, We Celebrate, We Believe. Recuerdo, Celebración y Esperanza. The English and the Spanish are not identical, but they never are. Translation is to betray, it's also to create a new reality. And in this is also part of the interest of worlds of difference between people who speak Spanish and English. As I was preparing for this, I realized that I have never spoken English with Professor Solorzano. You know, from the first time we met at the university, I believe it was the University of Utah. I'm getting old, my memory's bad. But we have always spoken Spanish. And it was always a great joy to run into Armando on campus because of his grace, his kindness, his interest, his warmth. It made me happy to have somebody to talk to and just to say buenos dias, o qué tal. And to be able now to bring Professor Solorzano to the campus I work at now, Utah Valley University, makes me particularly happy. I've had occasion to work with Professor Solorzano's students, and I have to say that he's a masterful teacher. His students speak reams about his quality and his dedication to them. In fact, today, Professor Solorzano was awarded the Distinguished Service Award for 2017 at the University of Utah, and is kind enough to leave the banquet to come down to Utah Valley University to speak to us. He has many publications. He has been very active in the community. And his book certainly is worth much commentary and much discussion. But tonight I'm delighted to have him here as a joint effort of the MSSA Conference, the Mormon Social Science Association Conference, and the Religious Studies Conference on Multicultural Mormonism, to help us begin threading the needles of working our way through these different categories that divide us and yet join us. Please join me in welcoming Professor Armando Solorzano.
I'm speechless. What can I say now? Certainly, David and Ignacio have been for me an inspiration. We talk about our intellectual sharing, but I think what really unites us are our spiritual experiences. This quest to go beyond and continue in our journey. And in that spirit, I accepted this invitation. How many minutes I have for the presentation? 3 hours?
Why don't you say 10?
You let me know when you are tired. Otherwise, I will continue the whole evening. I will try to maintain it within 35, 40 minutes so we can have a discussion. I know the information that is going to be presented, it will inspire some questions. It would challenge some people, but everything is done with the spirit of coming together, with the spirit of dialogue, with the spirit of becoming one in our Creator. And in that spirit, let me tell you what I prepare. I'm going to start talking about the racial and ethnic population in the United States. For me, this is fundamental, because if we want to enter into a dialogue, we need to have basic information rather than misconceptions about how many we are in the United States. Then I'll move and talk about our religious diversity in our country. And then we'll start tracing the presence of Latino, Hispanics, Mexican, and Mexican Americans in the state of Utah, who is probably 5,000 years before the pioneer entered the state. Again, this is something that we need to contemplate and bring into consideration. I will talk about the relationship between LDS Latinos and Catholic Latinos in the state of Utah. I'm trying to be politically correct because, again, when I talk to Latinos, Hispanos, they don't call us LDS, they call us Mormons, but following the petition, the advice of the president of the church, I call them LDS. Also, the Latinos say, what are you talking about? I say, well, I'm talking about Mormons. Oh, now we can understand. Then I talk about immigration in Utah in the 60s and 70s to show that the majority of the immigrants in this state were mainly from South America, very different population. Okay. And the issue, the point of introducing immigration is because we need a theology about immigration. What does that mean, right? All of us are immigrants. This is not home. We are just going through to a final destination. I will talk about the big change in immigration since the 1980s with a very important shift, not only in Utah, but in the United States, where since 1980, before 1960, the majority of the immigrants were Europeans and Protestants. Since 1980, the majority of the immigrants, 84% of the immigrants, are from Mexico, Central and South America, and the majority of them are Catholics. So again, this invite a very meaningful conversation about what does that immigration mean for a state and for all religions. I will talk about what multicultural Mormonism means to Latinos. I will borrow some ideas from my brothers and sisters. I did about 120 interviews around the whole state, and I collect very meaningful information on LDS Hispanic. And I think this is a good opportunity to hear what they have to say. And what are the cultural characteristics of Latino spirituality? What are they expecting from us, from the LDS religion? And ended up with some conclusions that probably motivate some discussions for tomorrow, if that is possible. Okay? So let me start with the population, racial and ethnic population in the United States. So we know that right now 72% of the population are Caucasian or Anglo-Saxon, Anglo-Americans, some people call white people. We cannot agree on how to call this racial population again because these are social constructs. So 72% of the population are Anglo-Americans. Then we have almost 12% of the population being black or African Americans, and Latinos are 12.5% of the population. We are having a conversation because we are disputing which is the largest minority group. But again, between 12 and 13%. Then we have about 4% of the total population of the United States being Asian Americans, and only about 1% of the population in our country being Native Americans or indigenous people. Why is this important? So you have there the population in 2010, because in less than 25 years, there is going to be a dramatic shift in the population. Caucasian people, Anglo-Americans, are going to be the minority in terms of numbers. Only 49% of the population are going to be white people. The majority of the population in our country are going to be people of color. This is important because this is a different face of America. We already have names for them, but for us it's important to see where are we going. Are we preparing for this? What does that imply for our cultures and for our religions? But the shift is here. Some people say 2040, but some states already jump. One of them, the state of Utah. If you look at the number of students in public school, in Outland School District, 59% of all the students in public schools are Latinos. The same happened in the Salt Lake School District. 56% of all the students are Latinos. Okay. This reminds me of a term that Ignacio, Professor Garcia, uses, the Latinization of the United States. Beautiful term. Hopefully we have time to discuss a little bit more about it. But this is again, we are already in this transformation. When we talk about Latinos or Hispanic, like Professor David mentioned it, it's very hard just to grasp the singularities of the population because under this umbrella of Latinos, there are 22 nations, people of 22 different nationalities. Okay. According to the federal government, what put us together, 10% of the population in the United States are Protestant, 24% are Roman Catholics. LDS represent 2% of the total population of the United States. And what surprised, well, right there with the categories of the Jewish people, what surprised me is the Muslim population is not even 1%. And however, there are, again, portrayed now in very different ways in the media. Then we have Buddhists, about 0.7%, and people who declare themselves not to have religion or being atheist is about 16% of the population. Okay? So it's a very diverse religious country, and that's the beauty of it. If we talk about diversity, if we look at just the LDS religion, how the ethnic composition look like? Well, Anglo-Americans, white people, Caucasian, are 86% of the total population. We Latinos, on the second place, about 7% of all Latinos being then African Americans, black people, 3%, and others 5%. Okay, but this is in the United States. Okay, if you look at the statistics, and we can talk deeply with Professor Ignacio Garcia, there are estimations that in the next 30 years, Latinos will be the largest LDS population in the world. Okay, and the growth of all religions, regardless of the denomination, are coming from Latinos. Then we can do, what is it about Latinos? Okay, wow, why that phenomenon is happening. So the future of religion, and again, Professor Garcia and Professor David, they have a beautiful article on NBC nonetheless, and it's called The Future is Mormon. Beautiful. Let's talk about that. What does that mean? I added this information because, again, if we look at the impact of immigration on LDS, we'll find that 93% of all LDS in the United States are born here. Only 7% are foreign born, which means that immigration has an impact, but not much. This is a fascinating question that one of our professors, that some of you know, Orlando Rivera, he wrote a fascinating article, The Mormon Chicano, addressing this particular situation. Hopefully we have time for that. Again, I'm just throwing ideas to start this conversation again, which impact the future of our religion. Now, if you look at the Catholic population in the United States, the largest number of Catholics in the United States are Hispanos, Latinos, 58%. Then you have Anglo-Americans, 22%, Asian Americans, 17%, African Americans, 5%, and others. Okay. So again, within the Catholic population, Hispanics are there. This is also fascinating in the state of Utah. 85% of all Catholics in Utah are Latinos. That means that if the Latinos, for any reason, leave the state, there will not be Catholicism. Okay? What is fascinating to me, and is something that we can talk about it, is that only 13% of Latinos in Utah are LDS. Aren't you expecting something different? This is a fascinating phenomenon. In fact, in 2005, Georgetown University, with a team of researchers, came to Utah to investigate what is happening. How in a state where the majority of the people are LDS are integrating Catholics, the immigrants. And there are some answers to that, fascinating issues there. So I'm going to jump. Again, if you have any question, probably we can wait until the end. And I'm going to go very fast and jump. If I'm over time, please let me know. Okay. I'm going to talk about the long presence of Latinos in the state of Utah. We know that 5,000 years ago, long before Columbus arrived to this continent, the Ute Aztec language linked the Utes and the Aztecs, the Shoshone, the Paiutes, and the Hopi. These are, again, the roots of the Mexican-American people, 5,000 years ago. And again, linked by language. So another important documentation that keep us to track this relationship is the similarity between the Aztec calendar that it was finished in Mexico in 1479 and the pictograph that we can locate in Sigo Canyon in towns of Utah. What it is this figure of Venus, okay? Again, the goddess of fertility, that is in Sigo Canyon, appears in the first round of the Aztec calendar. What it means to us is that the Mexicans start the trip south in Utah. So that's how we claim this is our homeland. This is where our roots are. So when people tell us Mexicans go home, guess what? This is home. We don't have any place to go, okay? And we can track, and we will feel proud of this. The sad part is that all these symbols has been vandalized, okay, with chisels. And I mentioned that because, again, Professor David Knowlton did a similar study on the apparition of the Virgin in a tree in Salt Lake City between 500 South and 500 East. Guess what, David? That symbol was also vandalized. Okay. Sad, right? Okay. But the roots are here. Okay. Then we have been here for a long time, and we claim this to be our land. This is our holy land. Okay. When we look at the Wasatch Front, we don't look at the potential for it, the ski industry. We look at the place where our ancestors are buried. The mountains are holy. I know that we have Zion National Park. That is not a recreation for Latinos. This is a sanctuary. This is Holy Land. When then that present continues through the expeditions of Dominguez y Escalante in 1776. And what Mexicans and Latinos are doing is recover our history. Because mainly what you hear is mainly about Dominguez y Escalante, who are Spaniards, but they could have done nothing without the help and the caretaker of the Mexican Indians. Okay? And again, I pulled this, all these names. Their influence of the Mexican Indians and the presence in this land was manifested in the names the explorers were given to where they were arriving. And we have, it took me 2-3 years to track this geography, but if you look at on your left side, those are the names given by the Spaniards and the Mexicans to the places in Utah. But look at your right side, okay? Those are the names that were given after 1848. The name changes, okay, completely. So that's why, again, when Latinos go through Lehigh, Manti, they start thinking, right? The memories start coming up. So what does that mean when we change names? To me and to the people I interview, what are the theological implications for the latter-day saints? What does that mean, the change of names? Well, to start with, the earliest people, the pioneers, they need to construct a collective identity and create other people's identity. You are with me, right? They need to differentiate them from everybody in this territory, right? So again, by giving the names to places, it was a good situation to start. Also, they need to establish boundaries in the new territory according to the interpretation of geography and environment, okay? They need, remember, the whole idea was to recreate the kingdom of God, Zion, okay? It was the divine plan. So again, it has religious foundations built over the foundation of other religion. That's where we enter in communication, right? That's where we start claiming that all of us belong together. Then the other necessity was to fulfill the deep beliefs in time and space. Remember, the pioneers were guided also by this idea of manifest destiny. God told them. Remember when Brigham Young into the Immigration Canyon, God talked to him and told him, this is the place. Okay. So this is where the when the kingdom should be constructed. So it need to be done. But what these changes mean for Hispanics? How did they interpret it, right? Well, for them, imply the negation of the landed roots of the culture, meaning for Latinos, their identity is based on the land, and it comes from natives and indigenous roots. Without land, there is no culture. It's motherland. Remember that, right? In some communities, in the area where I live, just to tell you that sense of space and time, when the child is born, the placenta is buried outside the house. What does that mean? That when that person dies, the spirit is going to come back to the land. So on that sense of relationship on my motherland, the one who produced, the one who takes care of me, the one that is generous, that even after I die is going to take on my body. I need to trust. So that sense of identity, again, is blurry through the changes of names. That has a strong impact on identity and the sense of belonging. Are you with me? If the Latinos doesn't feel identified with the land, they say we don't belong, right? We are not from here. So there is a displacement. Situations that, again, did not happen in other states in the Southwest. Like if you go to California, right? San Francisco, Sacramento, San Buenaventura. So there is a close connection there, right? Or Arizona, no? La zona árida, okay? And also it means that it produced diverse interpretations of immigration, okay? Right? Remember how we claim that the roots are here, but in this generation, the Latinos feel to be immigrants and say, well, what happened? How that transformation came into your mind? But also believe that this is our Mother Earth, that this is the Holy Land, and I have very powerful citations from LDS Latinos who still claim that position. Then we come to the period when Utah was Mexico in 1847. Again, if I bore you to that, please let me know and I'll change the issue. What is going on here? The LDS pioneer entered the Great Basin, running away from religious persecution from Nauvoo, Illinois. Okay? But that was in 1847. This was Mexico. Okay? And in my research, I found no evidence of asking permission to come into Mexican territory. Of course, when I published this article, it was not a good experience. Because the reporters, you know how they deal information, the press, they claim that I said that the LDS people were the first undocumented immigrants. I never said that. Because first of all, we never used that language before. What I said is that there is not evidence, okay? And this is important again, because the issue of immigration, okay? What does that mean? What does that mean when the LDS continuously immigrate, travel? It's pretty similar to the experience of the Israelite, of the Jewish people, the whole issue of diaspora, right? We come back to the first book of the Bible. Isn't that the same experience? To me, what we are lacking is the theological interpretation. What does that mean in the plan of salvation? Or like we call it, in the divine plan, right? So, but a year later, Utah, the state of Utah is annexed to the United States, okay? To the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. And this is, again, fascinating to us, okay? Because the historical connection is there. And in fact, if you go to small cities in Utah, there is a city beyond Bountiful, the next one Bountiful, clear beyond. And when you enter, it said, this city was created in 1847. I jump of happiness. because the meaning is what? It's Mexico. Yeah, this is my land. This is my homeland. And I'm not claiming the land, but it's, again, that sense of belonging, right? The sense of being here. And there is a lot of implications to the Treaty of Guadalupe. There are many interpretations. Again, one of the interpretations, there are 6 interpretations of why the LDS people, the pioneers, want to come to Utah. One of them is they were looking for a place where they can practice freely their religion, and they thought Mexico provided that opportunity. But then they got caught. You see that, right? And 7 months later, oh my goodness, we are again in the United States. Okay. How are we going to be dealing with this? Okay. Then the persistence of the collective memory of the Mexican Americans and Hispanic. We don't forget. This is an interview with Andrew Gallegos, probably David, you know him, and Ignacio. He told me in the interview, where I live, meaning Utah, there have been 4 different flags. The Spanish flag for several hundred years. Then we have the French flag. You know why, right? Because the French were the one who came for the hunting industry, right? And then the American flag. It is a kind of interesting history being part of this area. Collective memory, the memory of the group is there, okay? And how is it transmitted? Well, in the Hispanic, Mexican-American tradition, it's oral tradition. We inculcate that to our kids, right? So the kids have a sense of belonging, have an identity, they know who they are. Helping to build the kingdom, and that's when the first Latinos community were created in Monticello. Remember that at the beginning, Brigham Young has amazing ideas, like to build a sugar industry. But then they also want to build the sheep industry, okay? That little animals, because there are 5 words that I pronounce the same. This animal, the sheep, and then the sheep, the one that floats on water, and then the potato chips, and then the opposite of being expensive, all of them are cheap for me. So while I'm talking about, in here, again, the Hispanic has very strong experience in the chip industry. But the LDS people don't have that experience. So they come together and create Monticello. All the Hispanics were Catholics, okay, coming. They share social life, culture, and school with LDS. And the only day were Sundays where they were isolated. But this is not new, no, right? The majority of religious scholars, they said that the most segregated day in the United States are Sundays because everybody's separated, right? So what is interesting here also, that these Latinos, Hispanic, and this is a beautiful picture there, they met LDS Hispanics returning from Chihuahua. Why? Because this is the time of the Mexican Revolution. Fascinating. Again, LDS immigrating, but now in reverse. You got it? Because these were LDS, who have the colonias in Chihuahua, have children. The children were Mexicans, correct? But now they are coming to the United States because the revolution. So you can see this full interaction. And you're saying, well, what the LDS were doing in Chihuahua? Don't forget about 1896 when we came in the States and the condition through which we came in the state. Yeah? Yeah? The whole issue of polygamy. Okay? Early Mexican religious organization, I had to jump. I'm not good in keeping time, David. So you tell me. Dale, man. Okay, so in early Mexican religious organization, this is important for us, for LDS Hispanics and LDS Catholics, because our main religion, they were not interested in that. So what we create here was made by resources of the Mexican people. Mormons and Catholics organizations were created by efforts and resources of Mexican and Mexican American. Remember at this time, the whole efforts of the old missionary efforts were mainly in Europe. So Hispanic don't count much. So, but the Mexicans care about their religion. So in 1920, the Mexican Mormons in Salt Lake City created La Rama Mexicana, the first Spanish-speaking branch of the LDS Church. Okay. And we have grown. The LDS Church has grown significantly. Now we have 12 wards in Salt Lake City area. But the Catholics did the same. In 1927, Mexicans brought Catholic nuns and priests from Mexico to fulfill the spiritual needs of the miners. Okay. So the efforts come from the grassroots, okay, because neither of the hierarchies of our religions were interested in us. But being profoundly spirituals, Mexicans, Latinos, or indigenous people, we have to practice what we believe. So again, in 1937, you see the Gonzalez family. Probably you know Bill Gonzalez. And yeah, oh, it starts sounding familiar, right? Along with another 20 individuals, they create St. Joseph Church in Monticello. The church is pretty small, mainly because the Latinos, the Hispanic, don't have $35 for a longer plot of land. And the same happened also with the creation of the First World. They don't have money to make it larger, okay? So lack of resources. But you can see the investment of our people, okay? The religion and the spirituality in the minds. And mainly what it is, remember, the LDS people were not interested in proselytizing in the minds, okay, since the very beginning, okay, for many reasons. First, remember, the capital invested in the mines was not LDS capital. It came from another states, right? Second, the majority of the people working in the mines came from other countries, okay? And so, but what happened is that when all these economic situations of the mines, if the economy of the mines were down, some religions left. So what do the people have to do? They change religion. And this is the case of Jose Gallegos. He lived in his family still in Carbon County. First, he was an LDS, converted in the Salt Lake Valley, went to work in the mines. But since the LDS Church was not there, he became a member of the Assembly of God. The church left. Then he became a Catholic. The Catholics left. Then he became a Pentecostal, right? But this is the beauty. He told me, I tell you even now, I don't think you have to be a member of the Assembly of God to get to heaven, and I don't think you need to have to be a Catholic or Mormon or whatever. I think it's really the relationship that you have with God. In my family, there was a need for the formalization of the experience of going to church, but I don't think that is the church in itself. I do have a need to go to church on Sunday. I have a need to teach my child about the importance of believing in God, about the importance of church attendance, about the importance of paying your tithing, about the importance of living like a Christian. That's at the bottom. That's how Latinos historically have dealt. That what matters is this intimate relationship with the Creator. It could come in many forms. The forms don't matter to us. What matters is the constant presence, the relationship with the living God. And we find it through many religions, as in the case of Joseph Gallegos. So this raises a very important question for Latinos and Hispanics in the state of Utah. As Latinos, what is it that put us together? What is the common denominator? Is it religion or is it culture? Can we separate them? Well, they work together. This is what I call crossing borders, because religion is an opportunity to share cultural expressions, to strengthen the faith in a living God, and build community. Those are the essentials. And this is a fascinating case of Berta Mayer, who is Catholic, and she was the mother of Vicente Mayer and Ed Meyer, right? Yeah. And we have also Maria Luz Solorio in LDS, who was one of the creators of the first Latino world. Both of them Hispanic, different religion. I interviewed them together. What did they say? Well, both of them, first of all, both of them sang and played guitars for the two churches. Okay. They prepared dances, cultural programs, sang in the funerals, and for mutual aid societies. So this is what is relevant. They said, we believe in the same God, even if they are from different religions, right? Fascinating. We try to live a good life. The best we can. Probably is not as good as we could, but we try. I think that this will be enough towards religion for anybody. If they try to be good to people, well, try not to do any harm to anybody and try to help a little bit when you can. I think that that's all that it needs in any religion. So the fact that they come together, to me, indicates that ethnicity and culture has a very strong weight in our lives. Yeah? I know I want to keep talking. And I give you examples of that. Okay? A good number of my friends are LDS. Okay? And I see the practices. For instance, they observe Lent. They don't eat meat on Fridays. I say, hey, bro, what are you doing? I say, well, it's part of my culture. But you are an LDS, you are not. Well, but I used to do it since I grew up. Good. One that really surprised me, and sometimes I laugh, you know how Mexicans, they do this sign of the cross when they go in front of the churches? You have seen that, right? So Mexican Americans and Latinos, they do that when they go through a war. I said, man, what are you doing? I said, well, it's a cultural indication of respect. Beautiful. Okay. When I did this interview, several LDS Hispanic families have the image of the Virgin of Guadalupe. I said, what are you doing with the Morenita? Well, I grew up with her. You see how culture start intermingling, right? And bring us together as people. And if we do it as an ethnic group, we can do it in a broader sense of the word. Okay. David, I have so much, but I don't know. I don't know what to do. I feel that is a lot of information. How many minutes I have left?
Why don't you take 15, 20?
Only? No, that's good. That's good. No. That's good. That's good. This is also important for us. If you look at the flag of the state of Utah, okay, 5 years ago, it has the two dates, 1847 and 1896. Beautiful. We love it. But look at what happened. Now, it's only 1996. I'm sorry, 1896. That hurts me. I love the old flag. I have one. Yeah? Because again, what does that tell me, right? It's recognition. But now it seems to me that has been obliterated. What happened in the Latino religion in the 1930s and 1940s? Okay, there was, again, good relationship between Catholic and Mormons, which again contradicts the whole stereotypes that we are always in conflict. That is not true among us. We respect. We have a value in our family, respeto, for whatever is going on in the family. Well, at that time, the Latinos, Catholic Latinos, and LDS Latinos live in the same barrios and get together for quinceañeras, which is, again, a cultural activity, right? The Sweet 16. Well, some LDS celebrate the quinceañera. Beautiful, right? Which is a rite of passage, right? And, well, should I say that? Yeah, I'm going to say it. For young people, is go to mission, right? So there are some rite of passages. The celebration, as we mentioned, again, both of them did it. Latinos started reporting in the 1940s members of both religions inside the family, because some members of the family convert to LDS. So new types in Utah start emerging. These contradict all what we hear, that we have very traditional, staunch families. No, we are very flexible. So the parents need to learn new roles. They have to teach tolerance, and not only have to learn it, they have to teach it to the kids, right? And that's how we survive as a family. Latinos were concerned about non-Latinos LDS church members, okay? Because they were troubled by the issues of proselytizing and by rejection of Anglo-American Mormons. And this is an issue, and it came out in all my interviews, and we are going to give time, right? Say, why? Why is that? Interesting, fascinating to me, that the Bracero program that happened, right there after World War II, middle 1940s, we forgot everything about Utah and about the stereotype. What do we know about Utah? What you know, what all the people were saying, all these false generalizations, stereotype, misrepresentation, that Utah is a polygamous state, that is only for white people. And Latinos there, we forgot where Utah was located. Okay? I took it from Tomás Rivera. Okay? It was a beautiful book, Y no se lo tragó la tierra. He said in the middle of the book, comadre, you know what a comadre is, it's a co-parent relationship. Comadre, do you all plan to go to Utah? No, compadre, I'll tell you, we don't trust the man that is contracting people to work in, how do you say it? Utah. Why, comadre? Well, because we don't think there is such a state. You tell me, where have you ever heard of that place? Well, there is so many states, and this is the first time that they contract for work in those parts. Yeah, but tell me, where is it? Well, we've never been there, but I hear it's somewhere close to Japan. This is the 1940s. This is what is called historical amnesia. We forgot. We forgot. Not for too long. No. But you see all these stages of, that's why the title of the book is We Remember, We Celebrate, and that we do believe in what we planted here. I'm going to jump over these 60s and 70s. Mainly, the study shows that immigration at this time were mainly from South America. 91% of the people who came to this state was because the LDS Church. Okay? I'm not going to go into details. But still, okay, Mormonism is a very powerful magnet for people to come to Utah. Listen what Maria Beltran, she's a teacher at West Jordan. What is the reason, I asked her, what is the reason you came to Utah? She said, well, for religious reasons. This is interesting because we never talk about immigration as a religion in the United States, right? We will always talk in terms of politics, of economics. And besides, we only talk about immigration, but we don't talk about immigrants, the people, what they bring, the sufferings, the struggles. Well, Maria Beltran said, I came here for religious reason. I was single at the time I moved here. I'm an LDS. In my religion, is it advised that you marry within your religion for many reasons? And I felt very strongly that I should marry an LDS person. But at the time, I was 29 years old. There were not eligible men my age that were LDS. And I saw the choice of either marrying outside the church or remaining single. And I could not feel I could be single, so I prayed. And I felt I received the answer coming of coming to Salt Lake City. And that's mainly what brought me here. Don't remind you this, the same verse in the Exodus? What God told Abraham, leave your father and your mother and go to the land that I'm going to show you, the land of honey. It's the same thing, different words. Very biblical, very spiritual answer. Okay. So another person, John Beltran, he's a professor. I'll change the name to respect the confidentiality. He's a professor in Westminster. I asked him, why did you come to Utah? He told me, I'm up to Utah for the purpose of finding out if there was a chance I could get into college at Brigham Young University. Interesting, huh? All the reasons to come to this state. And the same person saying, please, I'm not immigrating. I'm returning to what you might call the mother faith, to the place of my ancestors. We are returning to our sacred land. Does that make sense to you? No? Returning to Zion. Some Latinos are returning to Zion. You get an interesting return, whether they are from Mexico, whether they are from Colombia or Nicaragua, all the countries south of the United States. You get a certain number of later-day Saints Mormons who are saying, I'm coming back. I'm coming back. This is where I want to be. I want to be close to the center of my religion. If you are Catholic, you go back to Rome to be close to the Vatican and the Pope. If you are a Muslim, you want to be close to Mecca. And so it is with Mormons. They want to be close to the seat of the religion center, the religious head, which is the president of the LDS Church or the prophet. It's this sense of connection that brings people. So religion is a powerful magnet that keep calling people to return to the sources. We start this presentation by, pointing out all these hieroglyphs, right, in Sigon Canyon. Well, Mexican Americans have the mythology of Aztlan. Some of you are acquainted with that, right? This is the land that God gave them to the Aztec people, where the Mexican Americans and Mexicans come from, right? So in the past, there is this belief that this was Aztlan, okay? For instance, Salt Lake, it was called Copal, and Aztlan and mainly are the land where there are enough fruits and water, thinking more in indigenous terms, okay? So the question is, we have two mythologies, and when I talk about mythology, I'm not talking about something false. I'm talking about a set of ideas that move people to action, right? Put people to move. So that is the case in Utah. So that's what people call it Utah Aztlan and Utah Zion. Yeah, these two powerful ideas working together in the same place. So again, Aztlan and Zion, as we understand it now, there are no borders. It's the place of the indigenous people, the Mestizo, the African Americans, the European Americans, all Abraham children. And I think this idea came from Fulgencio Bautista. Fascinating, right? All of us are Abraham. So we share the same space. Aztlan and Zion are no places, but a state of mind, meaning way of thinking. Aztlan and Zion means higher level of consciousness. That means a different way of being a human being. That is fascinating. Where people try to become more human, more compassionate, more tolerant. Places where people fulfill their human destiny and they call to transcendency, to go beyond, or borders, or limits, or territoriality. And then you have this statement now, because it came back, again, Utah is our homeland. We are not immigrants. When people tell us Mexican go home, we don't have a place to go, this is home. We mentioned that. We were here before the settlers entered the Southwest, and we are going to remain here, mainly because our families are American families. This is our country, Utah is our state, and we want our children to grow up with a sense of respect and reverence for Utah. Beautiful image, beautiful image. I'm gonna close. Some ideas with probably can be considered in your discussion in multicultural Mormonism. The fundamental question of all religion is whether they need to be identified with one cultural expression or they need to be truly universal. Because any religion, it doesn't matter which one it is born in a particular context, in a particular place, in people with a particular language. The question for all is, are we going to keep it this way? Or is this religion meant to be for all people? That is the question. And in fact, you know Armand Moss, okay, beautiful, a beautiful scholar. He said, in fact, this is not mine, it's him, the success of Mormonism depends on how it resolves the contradiction of two historical realities. On one hand, Mormonism has traditionally taught particular doctrines favoring some ethnic groups over others, which make it local, right? Yet, the church has always has an extensive proselytizing program which focus intended for all people everywhere. And I think this is the call. This is what we have to answer. This is our responsibility. Okay? Certainly there have been some solutions, but only at the intellectual level. Okay? But I think this is the fascinating call within cultural Mormonism. Then the task of the church, of any church, only comes possible when people are accepted as they are and where they are. This is respecting the cultural settings. Okay. That's the only way
Everything can be successful. The seed of the gospel are implanted through the culture, ritual, customs, and practices of the people. He got tired. So this is fascinating, the interpretation of culture. Culture is the natural expression of God's grace. Isn't that right? It's how God has been revealing to particular people in a particular place. So therefore, all cultures are valid, but particular to the specific groups. And this is again something that came in all the interviews.
it was not easy to deal with it. I struggled with it, probably as you do too. But it came the issue of lineages and ethnicity. Okay? And Latinos, Mexican Americans, they have a very long spectrum of how to understand lineages, whether they are from Ephraim, Manasseh, Lamanite, Nephites. Okay? The answer is, some of them say, that for me is fundamental. Other people say, that doesn't really concern me. Okay. But we found cases where, again, we need to think seriously about this. This is the case of a Latina, a Hispana in St. George, married to an Italian person. And they have two daughters. One is very light complexion, and the other one is darker. Okay? So when they went for the patriarchal blessing, one was given the lineage of Ephraim, and the other one the lineage of Manasseh. This woman was in tears. But she told me, very rooted in his LDS faith. He said, hay muchas David, help me to translate it.
There are many things which we should believe on faith. There are things that I am not going to understand in this life, and for that reason, I let myself be carried by the faith. In my family, it's very difficult, because one of my daughters thinks that she came from another family, and it's not that way. These are things that I am trying to understand, but my understanding doesn't quite reach them yet. They are things that I leave for the future, and I'm not going to look to someone to explain it to me. I can't understand the lineage of the Spirit.
That's, again, and I know I saw your program, and there are some presentations that deal with that. This, again, is interesting in our vision or in our belief where God is going guiding the church. Some cultural characteristics. Yeah, I'll promise you I'll finish. Promise you. We know about these Latinos and Hispanic from all religions. That's what I'm talking about, spirituality. Religion and spirituality are two different dimensions. Okay? But we know for sure that this is religiosity for Latinos is creative, is imaginative, and put together a view of suffering, abuse, joy, marginalization, and the unquestionable presence of God in the midst of the people. So religion for Latinos is a manifestation of hope. It's a way of liberation. It's a way to a dimension where everybody is equal. So the new people, that's how we call ourselves, the mestizo, the Latinos, accept Christianity because they saw in Christianity a living God, which is a different concept. This is not a theoretical God. This is a living God. It's a God that is close to me. It's a God that walks with me. It's a God that suffers with me. It's the God that joys with me. So that living God is a God of love, mercy, and compassion that fully identify with Latinos. Another characteristic, God is primary life. Life is continually unfolding, and Latinos manifest this deep mystery inter saying, no tenemos nada, pero tenemos vida. Okay? Meaning, we might have nothing, but we have life. We have God on our side. God lives with us. And this is, manifested in other cultural traits. So given the socioeconomic conditions of Latinos, they depend on visual and oral skills to teach and celebrate their faith. They are not much interested in concepts, in theologies. They learn it by seeing, to rituals, to liturgies, to testament. In my classes, in one of my classes, I asked my student if there are LDS and go to Anglo-American worlds, to go to a Latino world. I don't understand language, doesn't matter. You are going to see cultural differences. And they come with amazing reports. One of them that always is striking me is that at the time of the testimonies, when they go to Anglo-American world, there are just very, very few short line of people. But when they go to Latinos, there are big lines, because they want to talk. It's this orality of the culture that we need to understand how it's expressed. Another one that caught my attention is when they go to the Latino world, Spanish world, they don't have crying rooms. I said, what do you mean they don't have crying rooms? The whole world is a crying room, but they are respecting this one. So it's a cultural, because they want to integrate the children. So again, the visual and the oral skill of Latinos. So it's the combination of seeing it, listening, and talking becomes the embodiment of the faith. That's how their faith becomes a reality, becomes flesh to them. It's something that they feel. And they take it from, remember, the first chapter of the Bible, the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. God created the Word to talking, conversation. That's why that skill is so important to them. And so the gospel become flesh by seeing and listening. Another cultural characteristics of Latino spirituality, religious experience and religious formation is experiential rather than conceptual. They have to live it. Okay. Big theological treatise don't make a difference to it. Okay, right? It's given the so faith come to Latinos to the total experience, and they use this citation. You should love your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. It's the whole enchilada experience, if you want to put it that way, right? It's the whole participation of body and soul. God is primarily understood as a relationship through families and communities. I'm going to escape that. No, I'm going to finish it because otherwise it comes too late.
Thank you.
I know it's late, and yet Armando indicated he might be willing to take a question or two.
Sure. And remember, you have the whole day tomorrow, right, David?
Would anybody have a comment, a question, something to add to the conversation?
Please. Yeah.
Can you wait for the microphone?
Who has got it?
You don't have one. Okay, go ahead.
Would you mind coming up here?
So I did have a question. In the current political environment that we find ourselves in, and going back to November of past year, when we saw the results of the primaries of the presidential race, and we saw Utah vote for Trump, obviously there's been some controversial issues surrounding Latinos and his stance on immigration. As a Latino person of color, an LDS person of color in Utah, I found a very big dissonance between the state that I was living in as primarily LDS and the way it voted and the way supposedly that church policies or church views were not in line. And so I guess my question is, how do I navigate or what advice or insights can you give on trying to navigate that dissonance?
Thank you so much. I appreciate your question. That's a hard question, especially when you have a political scientist, right, Ignacio? In front. It's not a particular situation of Utah. It's affecting all religion. Let me give you an statistics, okay? Just for you. If you look at voting behavior among Catholics, okay, 62% of Latinos voted for Clinton. 36% is the Anglo-American who voted for Trump. Same religion, but we're not united. You see, it's the issue of race. I don't have the statistics for the LDS. The Pew Research Center has not published them yet. But I would like to see. I'm aware of what you are saying. It's given the history of the LDS church within the political arena of the nation, what is going to be shaping different responses. I will say that even if we belong to the same religion, we don't understand issues in the same way. We don't. People say, well, I vote for the Republicans because they protect families. Well, according to a presentation, Hispanics go there. But guess what? Hispanics say, no, I voted because immigration. Yeah. In the past electoral campaign, the Latinos look for family. Now we look for immigration. Okay. So again, it's probably the priorities in our ethnic groups are different. And the issue will be to enter into a conversation. That's what, again, propose the issue of immigration as a theological. What do you understand by immigration? You were an immigrant. You entered Mexico in 1847, you came from Mexico back. We took all the people who were polygamists. We are still, again, one of the countries where the faith is growing. What does that mean? Can we talk about this and make a unitary political choice? I can risk an answer, but I think the answer is on us. But certainly, racial dividers in that election process is there. I don't completely understand. Because again, when the LDS are talking about expansion, we are thinking in creating walls. How is that possible? This is a country, this is a religion that built bridges, no walls. But still, we are supporting. You saw the news 2 days ago, right? That the support for the president is increasing in Utah, where in the nation is decreasing. What is the reason? We need to ask. I mean, they come just with that statement, but there are nothing that support, right? So we can better understand it. What is it? We struggle. Let me tell you, in 1848, the LDS created the Mormon Battalion to fight against the Mexicans. That hurts. And you go to downtown, and there is a monument. What do you do? What do you do? If you are to teach respect and tolerance, you should practice it. You enter a conversation. But that is, in my understanding, what is needed. That's what I love this, and that's what the reason why I accept the invitation. You guys are taking a big challenge. And I admire you for that and congratulate you to all people who are. Because these are very open, frank discussions. Do we have an answer? Probably not. But it's better to have the right question, like you do it, than to have a wrong answer. Because the answer should come from all of us. Thank you.
I believe there was another question.
Yeah, she has a microphone.
Okay.
It wasn't really a question, just a comment. Immigration is about family, and it's about religion, and it's always been like that. And I think if we try to understand how it's the same, then we wouldn't really differ in our political views, because that's ultimately what it always is family.
Yeah. But still, you have to answer the questions. Why we do?
Right, I'm not disagreeing at all,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
it's
no.
immigration is about family, it's about religion, and it's about safety, which is ultimately why people think we have to build a wall, right? So it was just to add, sorry.
And what are they building? For people not to come in, or for them not to go out?
I don't know.
One more question, comment.
I was, it's probably like 25 years ago or so, I was a freshman at BYU, and as a Polynesian, there was kind of a lot of, there's a lot of discussion back then about, we were given our own ward, and so we met together as a ward, and we had this really great high councilman who came in and said, we need to get our culture to be more like Christ's culture, and we need to abandon some of our cultural practices that don't fit with Christ's culture, And 25 years later, I'm kind of bitter about that. You know, as we try to, it kind of feels like, you know, that was something that was kind of indoctrinating and yet kind of, I don't know, I'm just kind of bitter about it. Yeah, and so I wonder how to, you know, to embrace multiculturalism and how to have this message to this predominantly white religion. And when you define culture as Christ's culture, as kind of becoming back to a white culture, you know, I wonder if you have comments about how to progress beyond that. I mean, I think you articulated well. Like that is a real struggle, I think, for any dominant faith like that.
Yeah. Again, they have. I know everybody. I really invite you to come back tomorrow, please. And yeah, and there was again some intellectual solutions. This juxtaposition, these contradictions of maintaining the faith, local or American faith, or as we say 40 years ago, no, the LDS religion was mainly an American religion. Well, then it became international, but now we want to make it multi. This, to me, is an indication that we want to work on that, and we need to take what is essential in religion, and I think Armando said, try to solve that by going back to the Paulinian theology. You just put the mind of Christ in you. What does that mean? And again, in my understanding, when you put the mind of Christ, you transcend ethnic and racial values. And you come to categories of love, universal love, disinterested love, genuine love. Then you come to issues of understanding, no sympathy, no tolerance. I don't need to tolerate you. I need to embrace you because you know what? You are me. You are in the same body of Christ, isn't it? There's nothing that differentiates us. We were created by the same person. But in order to achieve to this level, we need to surpass these superficial borders of racial and ethnic divides. Right? But we need to create higher level of consciousness. We need to get into the experience. And again, I think it's possible. Some religions are transcended, and I think you are bringing down the most important reasons why people are living religion. It doesn't matter which religion they are living, because religion doesn't answer what is important to them, which is the issue of family in a more compressed way, just not blood related, but other types of family that we created, universal families, human families. But this is the time to answer those questions, right? But it comes to a collective effort, to the we, right? Changing the culture, not only the religion culture, but sometimes the political culture. I remember when I grew up, right? When we prayed the Credo, we say, we believe, and everybody, we believe. Now we say, I believe. It's sad. No, it's really sad because Latinos said, I prefer to be condemned with everybody than to be saved by myself. Right? Because if you are condemned together, we're going to have a party, you guys. It's going to be fun down there, wherever, up there, wherever it is. Right? But it's this idea, what you are saying, is the sense of the mind of Christ, right? It is, which is, to me, overpasses. But again, I think you are right. It depends which theology is going to be coming into place.
I fear that we should probably draw to an end. I'm sure that Armando is quite tired from this excellent presentation, and I'm sure that many of you guys have a lot of thinking and a lot of understanding. As Armando said, please come back tomorrow and on Friday. Brian, do you want to give a little overview of what people can expect? Thank you, Armando.